I was driving from Reno to Salt Lake City last summer. A 6-hour trip I decided to start at midnight. Big mistake. The plan was simple. Beat the morning traffic and watch the sunrise over the mountains. But somewhere around 2:30 a.m., halfway between towns, I realized I hadn't seen another car for nearly 20 minutes. The road was just endless black asphalt, surrounded by nothing but desert and shadows. I had music playing low, trying to stay awake, when I saw it. A single set of hazard lights flashing up ahead. A dark SUV was parked on the shoulder. Hood up, one door slightly open. A man was standing near the front, waving one arm slowly as I approached. My first instinct was to stop, but something about the way he moved, stiff, almost robotic, made me hesitate. Still, I rolled down my window just a little and called out, "Hey, you okay?" He didn't answer. He just tilted his head and smiled. That smile, too wide, too still, like his face wasn't made to do it. Before I could say another word, I noticed something that froze me. There was another figure crouched behind the open passenger door. I only saw it because the hazard light flashed at the right moment. Someone else was hiding, waiting. I hit the gas. Hard. The tires screeched as I sped past them. In my rearview mirror, I saw the man suddenly sprint toward the road, waving both arms like he was angry. The SUV's headlights flicked on, and the car pulled out behind me. My stomach dropped. I pushed the pedal to the floor. The speedometer hit 90, then 100. No cell service, no exits, just endless darkness. The SUV stayed behind me for almost 10 minutes, keeping distance but never dropping back. Its headlights flickered a few times, almost like it was signaling something. Then, out of nowhere, I saw another car ahead, parked sideways across both lanes, blocking the entire road. I slammed the brakes. The SUV's lights behind me went off completely. For a moment, everything was pitch black. Then, out of the darkness, a single voice shouted, "Get out of the car!" But it didn't sound like a police officer. It was calm, too calm. I threw the car in reverse, turned onto the dirt shoulder, and gunned it back the way I came. My car fishtailed, rocks flying everywhere, but I didn't stop. Not until I saw a truck stop sign glowing faintly in the distance. I pulled in, shaking. There were 2 truckers inside the diner. When I told them what happened, one of them said, "Yeah, that happens sometimes out here. They use broken down cars to bait people. Then they take whatever they want, or whoever." I called the police anyway. They sent a patrol, but when officers checked the area, they found nothing. No SUV, no roadblock, not even tire tracks. The officer told me maybe I'd just been tired, that maybe I imagined it. But when I got back on the highway 2 hours later, I noticed something. At the exact spot where I saw that SUV, there was a small wooden cross by the side of the road, with the words burned into it. "We tried to warn you."
I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment in downtown Portland about 2 years ago. It wasn't fancy, but for $950 a month and walking distance to my new job, it was perfect. The building was old, brick walls, narrow hallways, creaky wooden floors. It had that kind of character people pretend to like until they spend a night alone in it. The landlord told me the upstairs unit was vacant, being renovated so I'd have peace and quiet. But on my first night, around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps. Slow, heavy footsteps pacing back and forth directly above my ceiling. They went from one end of the apartment to the other. Pause. Then started again. I thought maybe a maintenance guy was working late, or maybe the landlord lived up there. The next morning, I asked about it. He frowned and said, "That apartment's locked up. No one's been in there for months." I laughed it off. Buildings make noise, right? But over the next few nights, it kept happening. Footsteps, dragging sounds. Sometimes a faint thud, like something heavy falling. One night, it got worse. I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone when I heard faint whispering. Not from outside, not through the walls. It was directly above my bed. I muted my phone and held my breath. It sounded like 2 people talking in low, raspy voices, but I couldn't make out the words. Just a rhythm, like they were having a slow argument. After about 10 seconds, there was silence. Then, 3 loud knocks from the ceiling. Knock, knock, knock.
I jumped out of bed. My heart was racing. I grabbed a broom and hit the ceiling back, yelling, "Who's up there?" No answer. Just silence. The next morning, I convinced the landlord to unlock the upstairs apartment and check. We went up together. The moment he pushed open the door, a stale, cold air hit us. The place was empty. No furniture, no tools, no footprints, just dust, thick, untouched dust. But near the center of the living room, there were 3 perfect circles of clean floor, as if something had been sitting there recently, or standing. I asked if he knew who lived there last. He hesitated, then said quietly, "A woman named Claire. She disappeared last winter. Police never found her." That night, I slept with my lights on, and right around 2 a.m., the footsteps started again, but this time, they didn't stay above me. They moved down the hall, then down the stairs. Then they stopped, right outside my apartment door. I stared at the handle, barely breathing. The metal knob turned slowly, half an inch, then stopped. The next morning, I packed my things and left. When I went to return the keys, the landlord told me something that still makes my skin crawl. He said, "That's strange. I went up there yesterday after you left. The door to the upstairs unit was locked again, from the inside."
A few years ago, I took a solo trip into the Smoky Mountains. I'd just gone through a bad breakup and wanted some peace and quiet. No phone, no people, just me and the woods. I booked a small log cabin on a rental site. It looked cozy in the photos. 1 bedroom, fireplace, surrounded by pine trees. When I got there, it was even more remote than I expected. No cell service, no Wi-Fi. The gravel road ended half a mile from the cabin, so I had to carry my bags the rest of the way. The air smelled like rain and wood smoke. For the first 2 nights, it was perfect. Peaceful days, cold nights, just the sound of crickets and wind in the trees. But on the 3rd night, I started to notice things. It began with little sounds, faint creaks as if someone was walking on the porch. Then, soft tapping on the window nearest my bed. I told myself it was the wind, maybe a branch. But the tapping was slow, deliberate, like knuckles on glass. When I finally got up the courage to look, there was nothing. No animal tracks, no movement, just darkness. The next morning, I found something strange by the front door, a set of bare footprints, small like a child's, pressed deep into the mud. They led from the woods straight to my porch, and then stopped. No prints leading away. I was freaked out, but tried to rationalize it. Maybe hikers, maybe old tracks. But when I came back from a walk that afternoon, the cabin door was slightly open. Inside, everything looked the same, except for one thing. A photo frame that had been on the mantel was lying flat on the floor, glass cracked.
It wasn't mine. It showed a family of 4, 2 parents and 2 little girls, smiling in front of the same cabin. There was handwriting on the back. July 2002, our last summer here. That night, it rained. Hard. I was sitting by the fire when I heard it again, the knocking on the window. But this time, it wasn't just one. It was several, all around the cabin. Tap, 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 like a circle of hands pressing against the glass. I grabbed my flashlight and yelled, "Who's out there?" The knocking stopped. Then, from the hallway behind me, a floorboard creaked. I spun around, shining the light. Something small darted across the floor, too fast to see clearly. I ran to the bedroom, slammed the door, and pushed a chair against it. For hours, I sat there, listening. The rain, the creaks, and somewhere in between, a faint giggle. A child's giggle. By morning, the rain had stopped. When I finally opened the door, the cabin was quiet again. But near the fireplace, the ashes had been disturbed. Someone, or something, had drawn 4 stick figures in the soot. Too tall, too small. I left that morning without even packing. When I got home, I looked up the cabin's address online. There was an old local article from 2003. It said a family of 4 had gone missing there. Search teams found the father's truck, but never the family. The headline read, "No signs of life in the cabin." And the photo with that article was the same one I'd found on the floor. I grew up in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. Kids rode bikes, people waved from porches, and the loudest thing you'd hear at night was a lawnmower starting too early in the morning. When I was 24, I moved back in with my mom for a few months after losing my job. It felt strange being back, familiar, but off somehow, especially because of the new neighbor who'd moved into the old Peterson house across the street. He was an older guy, maybe late 50s, always wore the same flannel shirt, jeans, and a baseball cap. He seemed quiet, polite enough, always waved when you passed, but no one really talked to him. Mom said he kept to himself. But she also said something else that stuck with me. He moved in awfully quick, right after the last tenant passed away, didn't even see a moving truck. The first weird thing happened one night around 11 p.m. I was taking the trash out when I noticed the light in his upstairs window flickering, not like a bulb dying, more like someone walking back and forth with a flashlight. Then I saw him. He was standing in his yard, completely still, facing my house. Not waving, not moving, just staring. I froze for a few seconds before forcing a casual nod and going back inside. But when I looked again through the window, he was gone. Over the next week, I kept seeing him at odd hours, sometimes sitting in his truck with the engine off, sometimes standing in the shadows of his porch, hands in his pockets, staring at the street. I told my mom, but she brushed it off. He's probably just lonely. One night, though, things got worse. Mom had gone to bed early, and I was downstairs watching TV. I heard our doorbell ring, then again, slower. I checked the peephole, no one there. But as I turned away, I saw movement outside the side window, someone walking along the side of the house. I went to the kitchen to grab a flashlight. The motion light outside came on, and for a second, I saw him, the neighbor, standing by the window, grinning. I shouted, and he bolted into the dark. I called 911 immediately. The cops came within 10 minutes, but they didn't find him. They went to check his house, and that's when one of the officers came back to me, pale-faced. He said, "Ma'am, there's no one living there." I thought he meant the neighbor had fled, but then he explained. The utilities were disconnected. No furniture, no sign anyone had lived there in months. The property, he said, was still listed as vacant, and the last recorded tenant, the man who'd lived there before, had died 6 months earlier. His name? Thomas Miller. The same name printed on the mail that was still sitting in the neighbor's open mailbox. If you made it this far, thanks for listening. These were 4 disturbing real events too creepy to be coincidence. Which story scared you the most? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more true horror stories every week.